They had hunted with spears for thousands of years, running down prey with sheer endurance, facing danger at arm's length. But one moment in prehistory changed everything: the birth of the bow. For the first time, humans could strike from a distance, killing with silence and precision. This was not just a weapon, it was a revolution. The bow turned hunters into strategists, tribes into conquerors, and survival into dominance. From the first bent branch and twisted sinew, a new chapter of humanity began, one where a single arrow could alter the fate of an entire world. For countless generations, prehistoric hunters had known only one way to bring down their prey: with courage, endurance, and the spear, a weapon that demanded closeness, demanded risk, demanded that a human body step into the path of beasts larger, stronger and deadlier than themselves. But then came a discovery so simple yet so transformative that it rewrote the very balance of power between humans and the world they struggled to survive in: the bow. Imagine a time when every hunt meant running alongside stampeding herds, when a mistake meant being gored by tusks or torn by claws, when survival depended on strength and proximity. And then picture the moment a hunter first strung a flexible branch with twisted sinew, not yet knowing that this crude arc held within it the seeds of a revolution. The bow was not born perfect. It was likely fragile, its arrows short-ranged, its pull weak. But even in its earliest form, it carried something no other weapon had given humans before: distance. With a bow, a hunter could strike without standing, before the horns of an aurochs, without feeling the hot breath of a charging bison, without risking the crushing power of a mammoth's legs. And this distance was more than safety. It was power. Each arrow transformed the hunter into something new, something more than flesh against flesh, more than prey turned predator. It turned humans into strategists, into masters of patience, into beings who could kill with silence, precision, and planning. Archaeologists believe that early bows first appeared tens of thousands of years ago. Fragments of ancient yew wood, unearthed in European bogs, arrowheads shaped with care and symmetry, evidence that somewhere in the deep past, someone bent a branch and strung it tight, and realized that a stone-tipped shaft could fly farther and faster than any thrown spear. From that moment on, the world shifted. Hunting parties no longer had to rush recklessly into danger, but could set ambushes, sending volleys of arrows into herds, weakening the strongest before the kill, saving energy, saving lives. Tribes that mastered the bow gained food more reliably, defended their territories more effectively, and carried an edge that reshaped human competition itself. For now, survival was not just about courage, but about technology, not just about strength, but about innovation. Imagine the first time rival tribes faced one another, one armed only with spears, the other with bows, one forced to close the distance, the other raining down death from afar. And in that moment, the bow became more than a hunting tool. It became a weapon of dominance, a tool of war, a force that would echo across history from the tundras of the Ice Age to the battlefields of empires. But in its birth, in its earliest use, the bow represented something deeper still: the human ability to look at the natural world, to see the curve of wood, the tension of sinew, the straightness of a reed, and imagine not just what it was, but what it could become. The bow was invention made tangible, a reflection of imagination turned into survival. And in that sense, every arrow loosed in the Ice Age skies was more than a weapon. It was a statement that humans were no longer bound by the limits of muscle and bone, but by the limitless reach of their own minds. The bow did not remain a crude tool of bent wood for long, because once humans glimpsed its potential, they refined it again and again, until it became not only a weapon, but a masterpiece of ingenuity. And in this journey of evolution lies the story of how technology reshaped survival. At first, bows were weak, their range short, their arrows often splintering on impact, but with every generation hunters experimented, choosing stronger woods like yew, elm, and ash, binding sinew tighter, shaping arrows with straighter shafts and sharper points, and discovering that fire could harden wood and stone alike, making projectiles pierce deeper into flesh. What began as a tool for ambush grew into an instrument of precision, one that required training of eye, hand, and body. For shooting a bow was not only about pulling string, but about understanding tension, balance, and timing, a dance of hunter and weapon that demanded practice and discipline. As bows improved, hunting strategies transformed. No longer did groups need to risk stampedes by surrounding herds. Instead, they could fire from the cover of trees or ridges, coordinating their shots to weaken the largest animals before closing in for the final strike. In places where reindeer and bison roamed, arrows rained down like silent storms, piercing lungs and slowing beasts, conserving the strength of the hunters and lowering the risk of fatal injuries. In regions where mammoths still walked, bows may not have felled the giants in one strike, but they allowed hunters to harass from a distance, driving herds toward traps and cliffs, turning chaos into calculated control. This power also began to ripple through human culture, for the bow became more than a weapon. It became a symbol. In carvings, cave paintings, and later myths, the archer stood as a figure of skill and foresight, someone whose strength came not from brute force but from patience, precision, and the ability to turn nature's elements into power. The bow also began to shape social dynamics. Those who mastered it were prized within their groups, hunters who could bring down prey with fewer risks, defenders who could keep enemies at bay, visionaries who carried within their craft the difference between feast and famine, life and death. And as human groups spread, the bow traveled with them, crossing continents, adapting to new landscapes, evolving into countless forms: small bows for horseback hunting, powerful longbows for war, composite bows made of wood, horn, and sinew that carried unimaginable force. But in these early Ice Age centuries, the bow was more than the sum of its parts. It was a revolution of thought, a moment when humans no longer accepted the limits of their bodies, but extended themselves through tools, bridging the gap between imagination and reality. Consider what it meant for a people who had known only the spear and the club to suddenly wield a weapon that struck unseen, that multiplied their reach, that altered the very rhythm of the hunt. It must have felt like magic, like calling lightning from wood and string. And with every successful hunt, with every beast brought down from afar, the bow carved itself deeper into the human story, laying the foundation for centuries of invention yet to come. It was, in truth, one of humanity's first great revolutions, a quiet leap forward hidden in the frozen silence of the Ice Age, when a bent branch and a taut string whispered of the limit. The bow's story did not end with the hunt, for once humans realized the power of distance, precision, and silence, the weapon began to take on a new role, one that would echo not just in the forests and tundras of the Ice Age, but across the battlefields of civilizations yet to be born. And in this transformation from survival tool to instrument of war, the bow became a symbol of both protection and destruction. Picture the moment when rival tribes clashed, one side armed only with spears and clubs, forced to close the distance and fight face to face, while the other rained arrows from afar, turning the tide of conflict before the enemy could even strike. The bow shifted the very balance of human power, giving advantage to those who wielded it, making the archer as important as the strongest warrior. As centuries passed, the bow evolved into countless forms. The longbow of Europe, tall and powerful, capable of piercing armor. The composite bow of the Asian steppes, made from wood, horn, and sinew, compact yet devastating in its power, wielded by horsemen who could strike with terrifying speed. The recurved bows of Africa and the Americas, adapted to landscapes and prey unique to those worlds. But long before these refined versions appeared, the bow carried weight beyond its wood and string, for it entered human myth and spirit. In many early cultures, the bow became the weapon of gods and heroes. Hunters painted in caves with drawn bows, legends of sky archers who shot stars across the heavens, spirits who guarded the boundaries of the tribe with invisible arrows. For the everyday hunter, the bow was still practical survival, but within the collective imagination it was already something larger, a symbol of control over chaos, of human mastery over both beast and man. With each improvement, its place in society deepened. It was used to defend territory, to guard families, to compete for dominance, and in time it reshaped the very way humans thought about conflict. A fight no longer meant only strength at close quarters. It meant patience, precision, and the unseen strike. And so the bow did not just change the outcome of hunts and battles, it changed human strategy itself. Archaeological evidence suggests that by the late Ice Age, arrowheads were being made in vast numbers, shaped not only for penetration but for speed and distance, showing how widespread and crucial this weapon had become. And as humans spread across continents, they carried the bow with them like a sacred inheritance, refining it in each new environment. By the time civilizations began to rise, the bow was already ancient, a weapon older than agriculture, older than written language, yet still evolving, still defining the ways humans lived, fought, and dreamed. And perhaps that is its greatest legacy. The bow was the first great equalizer, allowing the smaller to strike the larger, the weaker to outmatch the stronger, the clever to outwit the brute. In the frozen plains where it was born, it gave hunters the means to survive against beasts far larger than themselves. And in the centuries that followed, it became the tool with which empires expanded, myths were told, and identities forged. The discovery of the bow was not just the invention of a weapon, it was the birth of a new way of thinking, a way in which humanity no longer accepted the world as it was, but reshaped it with vision, patience, and invention. And in that silent curve of wood and string lies a story of survival that carried us from the shadows of the Ice Age to the dawn of history itself.